Welcome to my review of How to Train Your Dragon Hidden Kingdom. Now, I think this will be quite a short review because it didn't overly excite me, and I don't think there's much needs to be said about this movie because you will know whether this is the kind of movie that you want to see or not. So, I will confess, until last night, I had never seen the first How to Train Your Dragon. Somebody very close to me had actually told me how it was their favourite film, but I'd never seen it. And because I was coming to the cinema today to see a triple bill, How to Train Your Dragon was one of those movies, and I thought, you know what? I'd heard a review that said if you haven't seen the first two, then you're not really going to get much out of this movie. So I thought, okay. So what I did, I was tempted to just come and see it as a standalone movie, but luckily last night I watched the first How to Train Your Dragon, because Netflix have it, by the way. For anybody that doesn't have Netflix, it's on Netflix, and do you know what? I really, really enjoyed it. I do quite like animated movies. I'm not a kind of overly big fan of them to the point where I watch all of them, but things like Wreck-It Ralph, if I think it's going to be a good movie, I'll definitely give it a watch. And this was one that straight away I enjoyed. I like the concept of dragons and Vikings. I thought, great, that's two character types that I can get on board with straight away. And I enjoyed the first movie from start to finish. I enjoyed it a lot. I really did. I thought the first movie was absolutely great. So I kind of had quite high expectations going into this movie. And while I enjoyed the movie, it didn't kind of knock my socks off. I think this movie would very much appeal to anybody who's a huge fan of the franchise, How to Train Your Dragon. I think the way the movie played out, the topics that it covered, and the way it brought everything together, I think if you're a big fan of the franchise, I think you're going to really, really enjoy this movie and you're going to get a lot out of it. But because I'm not that invested into the franchise, it was only less than 24 hours ago when I watched the first one, to me it was just okay. It was fine. So just speaking about where you can get your fix on this, just incidentally, Netflix has the first movie. It didn't have the second movie, or I would have actually tried to watch both of them. But what it does have, Netflix, as well as the first movie, it has all these additional series. So there's all these like spin-off episodes, like short 30 minutes, 20 minutes, some are an hour long episodes of How to Train Your Dragon, where obviously it develops all the characters a lot more, and I can imagine they'll be brilliant. I don't doubt that they'll be brilliant. So there's definitely enough there to really get you addicted to the franchise How to Train Your Dragon. Now for me, I don't have kids, so I haven't sat and watched them, and I probably wouldn't, although if I had a kid, I think I'd love to. It's something I'd definitely enjoy sitting and watching with a kid, I think. But to watch it on my own, I'm not that into it to watch all of the spin-off series. But Netflix has it, so if you're interested, get yourself a Netflix subscription and you can binge on them all and watch them all. So the third movie obviously carried on to a degree from what I already knew of the storyline, but having not seen the second movie, obviously now there's obviously a bunch of spoilers, so I know obviously certain things from the second movie that must have happened, and they would obviously be spoilers, so I'm not going to say anything about it. But if you haven't seen the second movie, basically like myself, I think you can still enjoy this movie as a standalone. I didn't find any of the bits that I'd missed annoying. Like, there was a couple of key things that had clearly happened, and it didn't actually bother me at all that I'd kind of skipped that part, because the main characters that we get to know from the first movie, they're still in it, still kind of doing the same thing. So that was nice. That I did at least recognise, a good chunk of the characters, and the holes that were missing from my knowledge, the film made crystal clear. There wasn't really any points where I was thinking, what's going on here? I don't get it. It was fine. So basically, if you haven't seen the second movie, it absolutely doesn't matter. Now, on that note, I'm wondering whether seeing the first movie is completely essential. I think you could still watch this movie and get some enjoyment from it if you haven't seen the first or the second one. Don't get me wrong, I don't doubt for a second that the more you've seen the first movie and the second movie, definitely the more you will enjoy and the more you will get out of this third movie. But I think if I'd have gone to the cinema having not seen the first movie, I think I would have still enjoyed this third movie on more or less the same level. You know, it was definitely watchable as a standalone movie. You know, you can pick up straight away what's going on. The storyline and the plot isn't overly complicated. You just go straight into this world and you can gather what's happening and you can pick it up and understand the storyline perfectly well. So that kind of covers, you know, whether you're a die-hard How to Train Your Dragon fan or not, which I'm not, but nevertheless, I still quite enjoyed it. So, you will know for yourself whether this is the kind of movie you want to see. If you are into Train Your Dragon, How to Train Your Dragon, you absolutely, you know, you've probably already gone and seen this movie before you've even listened to any reviews because you know how badly you want to see it. But if you're just deciding, is this the kind of movie that I should take my kids to? Is it a movie that I can get into? Then I'd recommend get it watched on Netflix quickly and then go and see it, because you will definitely enjoy this franchise, and I think you'll enjoy this movie all the more if you've seen the first movie. And I think if you haven't seen the first movie and you watch the third movie, then all of the spoilers and everything that are going to have unraveled themselves, that's going to take away a lot of your enjoyment from the first movie. Like I say, I thoroughly enjoyed the first movie. I thought it was actually brilliant. So if I hadn't seen that and I watched the third movie, going back and watching the first movie, it would have been impossible to get the same enjoyment level out of the first movie. So definitely give the first movie a watch because it's just brilliant. I think I enjoyed that more than the third movie personally, but that isn't to say that the third movie was bad. It just didn't quite have the same impact on me as what watching the first one did. I did note that, you know, it was maybe supposed to be sad at times. I don't know, because I wasn't that invested in it. I didn't necessarily find that to be the case. But nevertheless, it was a decent movie, worth seeing and quite enjoyable. So let's have a look at the key review points. I'm not sure if I'm going to quite score this a 7 out of 10. 6.9 I think was my thoughts when I was sat in there watching the movie. A 7 out of 10 is probably fair, but like I say, I would be tempted to just drop it slightly to 6.9. But do you know what? I think because I enjoyed the first movie and because of the fact that I haven't seen the second, I think we'll give this a level 7 out of 10. I think we'll score this one. So, is it worth paying to see at the cinema? Well, this is a visually spectacular movie, and it's definitely worth, if you're into the movies, it's definitely worth going to the cinema to see this one. I did feel at times it had a hint of Transformers-esque in terms of how much action was going on the screen. So a lot of time the screen seemed a little bit dark, and in all honesty, it did feel at times like there was kind of so much going on the screen that it was a little bit hard to keep up, because obviously we've got dragons, just like in Transformers. You've got robots. In this movie you've got dragons, and all the dragons are quite individual, so you know, you're trying to figure out which dragon's which while there's a lot of action going on the screen. So therefore, to be able to get the best opportunity to really understand what's going on in the action scenes, I think seeing this at the cinema would definitely pay the best reward on the big screen. So if you're big into your movies and you're taking your kids, this is definitely one to go and see at the cinema. No doubt it'll be the Movies for Juniors weekend rates as well at some point, where I think you can take your kid for like $1.99 on a Saturday and a Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. So you absolutely 100% want to be doing that. Even if you haven't seen the first one or two, go along and see this. It's definitely worth paying $1.99 for, even if you've never seen any of the previous ones. But if if you can get your kid along to the cinema to see this, definitely worth a trip to the cinema for this one. And I would recommend sitting. You don't want to sit too far to the front, so that you're having to look left, right all the time, because like I say, there is a lot going on the screen. So I'd rather be closer to the front than right at the back, because it's such a visually spectacular movie. I think the closer you are to the screen, the more you appreciate the visuals. But like I say, you want to be just far enough back so that you can absorb what's going on in the major action scenes. And equally, I would probably suggest sitting central as well, so that you can take everything in with the least need to move your head left to right, and that kind of thing. So definitely try and sit central and close to the front without being too close. Popcorn muncher, yeah, I think there was loads and loads of noise right from start to finish in this one. So you've got no problem if you're munching popcorn during this movie. It wasn't overly quiet at any point, so feel free to get the noisy popcorn snacks on the go. In terms of whether there was anything at the end, I sat and watched the first movie last night right to the very end, and there was nothing at all. So when this movie finished, I hung around and just reminded myself of some of the characters' names as the cast was rolling, but then I quickly left because I had another movie to get to. So I'm pretty sure that there was nothing to watch, no additional scenes at the end of this movie. So that covers my 5 final review points, and that pretty much sums up the review as well. So I hope you found this review useful, and I hope you enjoy this movie with your kids, or if you just go and see it on your own without children, that's perfectly fine as well. But I don't think this has quite the appeal to just adults, if I'm perfectly honest. The first movie, I could definitely say adults, would enjoy that. This movie, I'm not so sure. I think it's more for the kids, I would say, this particular movie. But I wouldn't discourage anybody from seeing it. If, like me, you've got your Cineworld Pass where you can go and see as many movies as you want in a month without any additional costs, definitely go and give it a watch, because it's a great franchise and worth seeing on the big screen. So I hope you found this review useful. Please let me know what you thought. How did you compare this? Which is your favourite of the 3 movies? The first one, the second one, or this one? What do you think is next for How to Train Your Dragon? And which of the spin-offs on Netflix have you watched? And can you recommend any that we should all watch? What are the must-watch Netflix spin-off movies? Because there's a lot to choose from, and I'm sure some of them are really good. So please point out the ones that you think we should all give a watch. I'll certainly tune into any that you recommend. And until then, we've got Toy Story 4 to look forward to, coming soon this year, so look forward to that. And thanks for listening. We will see you on the next review.